Thierry Mallaré used to work at the World Economic Forum. You also went on to work with Klaus Schwab to write 3 books.
The Great Reset. And the Great Reset essentially is constructed around 2 core ideas.
I think the world which we want to create with the Great Reset, it will have to be more inclusive and more sustainable.
Did Klaus Schwab get in touch with you and say, let's write a book, let's call it The Great Reset, and these are the 2 ideas?
No, the idea of the book is mine. Great Reset is my idea. It's not an initiative.
Well, the World Economic Forum have an initiative called The Great Reset of Capitalism.
I'm not here to comment on Klaus Schwab's ideas. It's not my job.
Well, they're your ideas. They're in the Great Reset book.
Thierry, you co-wrote this book. What are some of the major impacts of the pandemic?
I'm ready to talk about the book, but don't ask me all the time to go back to what Klaus Schwab said.
So there is authority added that you've got to report ESG, environmental social governance. So what this means is that you're scored based upon how environmentally friendly you are, how you adhere to the net zero policies.
Nothing to do with the shareholders, Richard. Nothing to do with the shareholders.
Well, it is, because the shareholders are the people that make decisions.
No.
Thierry, the shareholders.
Are you telling me that this is an absence of freedom?
I'm saying you're saying that there are rules added that the shareholders are
regulation.
Yeah, okay. Now that's the authority part of it.
It's such a.
Well, it's a shift from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. So we are moving away from shareholder capitalism to another economic system. You're saying that it's a democracy, so our governments are enacting this, but they're not telling us. Yes, but what I'm here to establish is the facts. Okay?
And if your facts are wrong, it's my role to tell you that your facts are wrong.
These are both stakeholder capitalism policies. The heads of both parties which we get to vote for are enacting stakeholder capitalism. So we don't have a choice, really. We're getting it either.
Yeah, of course you have a choice. Become an MP and go and campaign against that if you don't like it. Sorry, Richard, I have to tell you, I find this deeply dissatisfactory.
I know, so do I. So does everyone else. I don't understand, Thierry, why you're getting very defensive about this. It's just an open conversation about...
Let's bring it to an end.
You want to finish this now because you're upset.
I've spoken for 40 minutes in vain.
You're shutting down, you're putting barriers up, you want to leave, you don't want to talk about anything. You don't want to talk about the Great Reset, you don't want to talk about stakeholder capitalism, you don't want to talk about your time at the World Economic Forum.
This interview, you look bad, I look bad. So let's forget about it and bring it to an end.
I don't look bad, Thierry.
And then you move all the time towards stakeholder capitalism.
At the beginning, we established that the World Economic Forum was founded to enact stakeholder capitalism. Okay, and the 2 policies were the 2 policies that you're writing about in your book, The Great Reset. There's a link.
No policies are being pushed forward at the World Economic Forum. And it happens that Klaus Schwab has an interest in stakeholder capitalism. True. It's not an institution destined to put forward policies.
This is the best time for leaders to come together and work jointly for the world to become more inclusive, more sustainable.
The UK government, the US government, most governments around the world have a partnership with the World Economic Forum. If you type in someone like Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, they've got a profile page showing their membership on the World Economic Forum.
No.
Net zero come from Klaus Schwab. He designed that. Yet Keir Starmer in the UK, who says, when he was asked the question, where does your allegiance align to, either Westminster or Davos, he said Davos, and he's pushing Klaus Schwab's net zero policies.
We must accelerate its transition to net zero.
All I'm asking you is a simple question. What is net zero? That's the solution to the sustainable and environmental issues that you're writing about in the Great Reset book.
Yeah.
What does that world look like when we have no carbon emissions? How does that affect us, the people? They enacted stakeholder capitalism in 2020. The Great Reset is the name of a 10-year transition to stakeholder capitalism by 2030. Okay, and net zero, the plan for net zero.
I think you read the book properly, or that you read the initiative properly.
That's I know, but that's your book. Okay, but Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, his initiative is the Great Reset of Capitalism. Even our King Charles, talks about the Great Reset of Capitalism.
With 2020 being seen as the super year, kickstarting a decade of action for people and planet.
a decade of action for people and planet also being the slogan of stakeholder capitalism.
I called for a Marshall-like plan for nature, people and the planet.
He wants to
reset the ways in which we live.
Is a 10-year transition to stakeholder capitalism. That's Klaus Schwab's goal since he founded the World Economic Forum, was to transition the world to stakeholder capitalism.
You are not inviting me on your show to comment on somebody else's ideas or declarations or pronouncements.
But you wrote
That's
a
not
book called The Great Reset. Does it upset you that I'm conveying a narrative that's very different than the one that you've been led to believe?
But don't bring me back constantly to what Klaus Schwab said this, he does that. I'm not even sure that you're right when saying he has a plan.
It's your world which we are discussing here, and to integrate you into this great reset initiative is absolutely essential.
I don't think you should be using this interview in the way we just had it.
And they see you being indoctrinated with these ideas, these inclusive and sustainable ideas, okay, like many people at the World Economic Forum. And then the Great Reset, and then the Great Reset was enacted to transition us to stakeholder capitalism. And sadly, you've been used by Klaus Schwab to write these books. He needed an author. And these are his ideas. These are not your ideas because they're ludicrous.
Go ahead with this. I can tell you one thing.